Hello, I'm Christopher Tarantola, and today on part 2 of Mars Talk episode 10, we are going to cover some news that we didn't last time, but then more importantly, we're going to go in depth with Scott Gill of Mars Underground fame, among other things, and what he is doing now. Now, we had him on last week, so make sure you check that episode out where we have a lot of great information going on there as well about the news stories of the day, as well as more background on Scott. Now, we're just going to basically do a lightning round for the Honorable Mention news. We're not going to necessarily go too in-depth about these, but if y'all want to make a comment, go right ahead. Actually, my favorite story, both from last week and this week, is Kerbal Space Program 2 was just announced. And when I was watching the video, they had like one of those behind-the-scenes videos. Gil, I know you know what I'm talking about, where, they're showing all kinds of really inspirational footage of the game and development, and then they show the developers talking about, what the first Kerbal Space Program did for them and why they're so inspired and all this. And one of the guys, they actually quoted Dr. Zubrin by name, said his quote that he talks about: when people look back at our time, what they'll remember is what we do when it comes to getting to Mars. They're not going to worry about whether there was a recession, who was for Brexit and against Brexit. They're not going to know about that any more than we know about what the politics are during Marco Polo's time. We know the name Marco Polo. We're probably going to remember the name Elon Musk. We're probably going to remember a lot of other names, but we're not going to worry about all that stuff, right? In 500 years, that's all we're going to think about. And that is inspiring them to make Kerbal Space Program 2, which is a great program to learn how to play game. It's the way they put it, you accidentally learn about how to do orbital mechanics. You learn about Delta V, how to talk rocket lingo, and how to land on a moon. And I think it's very important because the generation that's growing up right now, they're actually probably going to need some of that practical knowledge, and there's no better way than to do it accidentally while you're having fun. That's all I got to say.
That's amazing. I didn't know that. That's so cool. I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely. Well, and I still play the first game all the time. It's fun as heck. So, the big difference between the first one and the second one is they're basically, the first one was more focused on the history, more or less followed like style program. Where you had to first do sounding rockets, and then you get to just regular rockets making it to orbit, and then you can do your first orbit, and then you do a rendezvous, then you go to the moon, then you land on the moon, stuff like that. The next one is going to be focused on near future technologies. So you'll be able to make colonies on other planets, and then they've added planets that are around other solar systems, so you'll be able to start interstellar travel. That's really exciting. Excuse me. Okay, so moving on, we got the Europa Clipper mission. It has passed key reviews, so it is fully on the way, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what that mission is going to bring as far as science goes. We don't have much to talk about it besides that, but it's still on track, and that's a good thing. We got the ULA. They have 5 Delta IV Heavy missions left with that program. They are producing the Vulcan, but a lot of people are kind of pessimistic about their ability to stay in the game with people like SpaceX and Blue Origin coming on the scene, because they're still not going with reusability, and so that's possibly deadly to them in the next 5 to 10 years, according to some. You also have Chinese, who recently launched a telecom sat, and unfortunately it is malfunctioning. So that's been going on, and they have not been able to fix that yet. India has also recently launched a lunar probe. We talked about that a couple episodes ago as well. And it's been slowly increasing its apoapse around Earth until it was able to capture into the moon's orbit. So now it's in orbit of the moon, and it's now decelerating so that it'll lower its apoapse in order to be able to land on the moon. It's taking I think they've taken 2 or 3 months to do, what Apollo did in a couple days. It's a probe, and it's a lot more efficient on the field to be able to do it that way. So good on them. Congratulations to them on for their success for that mission. Now, speaking of ULA, one plus for them is the Sierra Nevada Corporation did recently select them and their Vulcan mission or program for their Dream Chaser missions. So the Dream Chaser is kind of like a successor to the shuttle, privately created, of course. It's a much smaller thing than the space shuttle, but yeah, that's going to be really cool to see launch. I don't know. I guess it's just going to be able to go to the space station back. I don't know what else. I don't know if it'd be able to make it to lunar orbit or not. So that'll be interesting to figure out. There were, I can't, there was probably 15 or 20 different stories, but there was too many stories on just different satellite companies. This guy made a deal with that guy. This government got these people to do this. All kinds of CubeSats and small sat companies doing all kinds of stuff to be elucidated here. Really, the bottom line with that is the small satellite industry is very healthy. It is growing, and I think it is. It's just booming right now. A lot going on there.
I just quickly. There's so much going on in space, and I just wonder when Scott first thought about making the Mars Underground movie, how much was going on in space at that time?
Oh, it was. We started it in 2000, very late 2003, and shot it in 2004 mostly. We were landing the rovers on Mars. We were landing Spirit and Opportunity on Mars.
Yeah.
It was kind of like that time. So that
which was exciting, but
yeah, SpaceX would. I don't even know if it existed.
I think it didn't start until 06, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So it wasn't. That's why there's no mention of SpaceX or Blue Origin in the film whatsoever.
Well, I hope to find out kind of what inspired you to make it, actually. So, but I'll let. Sorry to interrupt, Christopher.
No, you're fine. It's actually, we are actually moving on. That was the last story. So Mars Underground. If you haven't seen it, you definitely need to go check it out. It is a great show. I was about to say show. It's a great movie even today.
Right.
If you want to understand the Mars Society and what we're about, if you want to understand some of the history behind how Dr. Zubrin came to think the way he thinks about Mars Direct and our space program in general, and again, not just him, but a bunch of other people. Lucinda, Dr. Chris McKay is featured on here as well. You worked under him for a long time.
He was my supervisor at NASA Ames. Yes.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot going on in this show. I keep on calling it a show, and I'm not trying to demean it.
Documentary, but yeah.
It's my text, and I just go stupid sometimes with my words. So please don't take it as an insult. It's not intended to say. But no, there's a lot going on. It's really interesting, so you got to check it out if you haven't. But for those who have, I'm sure you paused my video, you went and watched it, and now you're back.
It's on YouTube. Yes.
There you go.
There's many pirated copies. The one that's the user.
We'll link to the proper
Blue.
one.
Okay. What's that?
Did you want it?
I did eventually put it on YouTube. I mean, it was on YouTube. There were like 10 pirated copies.
Wow.
For years, but I put it on in, I think, 2014. I did some rework on the film and put it up in 2014. It's got 13.5 million hits so far. I don't know how many people are actually watching it, but.
Well, I know I send it out as often as I can, so thank you for doing that. That's allowed me to every time I travel or talk to anybody, I can watch the Mars Underground. So
that helps you guys.
It's a great movie.
Oh, so thank you.
To be clear, Scott, what did you do on the project? Like, why are we talking to you about Mars Underground? Who are you to the project?
Well, who am I? Good question.
I
started making films as a kid. Loved science fiction. Carl Sagan I read all his books or most of his books as a teenager. Loved Cosmos, was a big influence on me. And moved to Hollywood after graduating college and worked as an assistant editor in the movies. And worked on movies with Bruce Campbell and Naomi Watts and Halle Berry, did all that kind of stuff, kind of big movies. Then started doing kind of B movies. I cut a lot of the Phantasm films, 2 of the Phantasm films, horror films. That's the one with the silver ball that drills into your head. You guys ever familiar with that series?
Yeah, I do.
I did a couple of those. Phantasm 3 and 4.
Movies, not It's just.
And then I did a bunch of stuff, tons of stuff. Bruce Campbell's Bubba Hotep. Have you ever seen Bubba Hotep?
I have.
Okay. Oh, you have. Pretty campy.
Awesome.
I was the editor,
But it's
one of
Bruce
the editors
Campbell,
on
so
that.
I consider that comedy more than.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's
I love
yeah.
Bruce Campbell.
Oh, I love Bruce Campbell.
Yes.
So then I got an opportunity to direct some documentaries that were pretty successful. Did one in Cambodia. Did some that sold to Showtime. So, and I read the Mars Underground. I'm sorry, The Case for Mars, around 2001, I think. And a light bulb just went off over my head when I read that book. I was like, "Oh my God, this explains it all." Because I was always a huge fan of exploring space, but until I read that book, it seemed like something that was never going to happen, or was going to happen so distant in the future. But Robert's book was great because it just explained a way to do it now with present day technology. So I sort of got on the bandwagon with that, but didn't get a chance to. So I always thought it'd make a great documentary, the book, The Case for Mars. But and I went on and did other things for a few years, and then I got an opportunity to get some financing with some producers, Kurt Eftekar and Randy Wooten. Decided they came on board. They liked the idea. I pitched it to them. And I remember going to Washington around 2003. I didn't have the financing yet, and followed Robert when he addressed the Senate panel on the future of NASA. And if you look at that footage in the film, it's very bad because I think I had a prosumer camera at the time because I just went and shot it.
Nobody knows this but you. Trust me.
I didn't know that was
Okay.
your own personal video. I didn't know that you shot that personally.
Yeah, that was before we actually wrote the script and storyboarded it all out and all that stuff. So yeah, I was in a cab with him, and there's a part in the movie where you see him he's kind of nervous because he's about to go address the Senate panel.
You ask me if I'm anxious, I am.
Oh yeah, you remember that section.
Well, I watched like an hour ago.
So yeah, and I also interviewed a bunch. I interviewed John McCain. He didn't make it into the film because he just wanted to talk about the Phoenix lander, which just had no point at the time for the film, which crashed, I guess. So then we just sat down, and it's an independent film. We didn't have a network behind us. We sat down, wrote the script, storyboarded the whole thing out, even though we didn't know, what people were going to say. But I like to really think through what the film is. And we started shooting it, I think, in December of 2003. So it's a long time ago. So this is ancient history. And we traveled around. We pitched it to Robert. He was totally on board. We shot him in his, Pioneer Aeronautics, I believe.
Yep.
That was fun. It was great. It was a lot of fun to make the film. And then the film was mostly made I had half of a duplex that I was renting in Venice Beach, California. And it was me and an animator, Casey Ben, who I'd worked on other films, other projects. He was a wonderful 3D animator. And Rob Thorne was the editor, and the three of us just sat there for a year. And we came up with shots, and we animated.
Animations in the. I'm sorry, I know I'm interrupting. All those animations in the movie.
Well, 90%.
And landing and all that. Y'all made those. Those weren't like.
Those were made in my living room. We bought a couple of PCs and we sat there and we animated. It was fun. Yeah, he was a wonderful animator. He's gone on to do major.
This was done like in 2003. It wasn't like.
Yeah, the animation looks pretty dated now, but for a low budget film, it was. Yeah, that was my goal, was to try to animate as much of it as possible. So yeah, that was a great fun too. It was a fun year. Probably the most fun film project I've ever got to work on, because I could do what I wanted and I had total freedom pretty much.
So in 2003,
I'm sorry, 2004. It wasn't finished until 2005.
Okay.
It was finished around. Yeah, no, it's old. It's pretty old.
Did we get any sort of preview at the Mars Society in 2004?
When I did the first cut, I think I sent a copy to Robert Zubrin in 2005, probably middle of 2005, and he really liked it, but he had some problems with parts. A lot of it we wouldn't change because animating took way too long and we didn't have any more money. So I know he objected to, like, the heat shield was way too small, and the jets coming out of the engines was kind of pathetic when he said they should have been these huge jets. But it was like, there was no way we're going to go open up the animation. And all those crafts and ships were designed by me and Casey Ben, just sitting in our apartment, just designing them based on the drawings in The Case for Mars. You'll recognize all those drawings in the book. So we just sort of plagiarized that and copied all that stuff. But some of it's a little just our own sort of creative license with a lot of it.
So you
and he didn't
take
like
them
the
with the grain of
title.
salt that they're worth, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, yeah. He didn't like the title. He didn't like the title. I know that because he was like, I'm not really the Mars Underground. That's another organization. That was like Chris McKay and those folks. But I thought the title was the most marketable title, so I kept the title. What else? Then in 2006, we distributed it, went to some festivals, went overseas, picked up by Discovery Channel in 2007. So it was on Discovery HD, Discovery Science. And then it just kind of sat dormant. It was out on DVD, stuff like that. It wasn't out digitally yet. I think it did screen at one of the Mars Society conventions.
Yeah.
Were you there?
In 07.
I was.
Okay.
Was it 07? I keep wondering when it was.
Well, I was
I
going
think
to
it
say,
was 07. I think it was 07.
if you were in 07, you couldn't download because I think that was when Twitter was created and Facebook was created back then.
Yeah.
If you wanted to download a movie, it would take you like an hour and a half.
There was no digital copies going out. Somebody eventually put it on YouTube, probably not long after that. And then it sat dormant for a while, and there were things I was very unhappy about the film because, in filmmaking, you sort of, what's this? You never finish a film, you just abandon them because you're tired of it. And I had to go on and do other projects. So, but there were things I always wanted to fix about the film. So I think in 2010, I had some time, so I sat down and updated it. Obama was president at the time, so I improved some things in the film. Got a new distributor, and it was on like the documentary channel, and then I put it up on YouTube. So, and it's been going strong ever since. 13 million hits.
The thing that some of it is outdated because it was made in 2010, but so much of it is not. And like I remember watching, like towards the end, you clearly asked everybody, when do you think we'll land on Mars? And you had one guy say, by the fall of 2018. And Dr. Zuberin said 2020.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. Yeah,
well, it shouldn't have been though. That's the thing that gets Lucinda.
Look over my shoulder. I still have the posters.
Oh, the poster. Right. Well, even when I updated it for in 2010, the dates are still way too optimistic. It's like we're going to land in 2024. I think that's pretty optimistic even today, right?
Well, Elon says he can do it, man. Elon says he.
I hope he's right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold my breath on that date.
Yeah.
We always just say Mars in a decade, but once we make our minds up to go there, we think to account based on case for Mars, just a decade.
Well, and the argument is if you don't have a really short timeline, every time you change governments, the program gets shut down. So you need these short timelines, like 8 years, 10 years. Let's get on Mars in the next 8 or 10 years. So the next president can't shut it down. And so what else? I was always a fan of science fiction as a kid, and I read a lot of stuff. So I always wanted to make a film about space exploration. So that was why I made the film, basically.
You have you seen the impact that the movie has had, and if so, do you have any like anecdotes of like people that have come up to you and talked to you about it, or anything?
Mostly just from the the YouTube blogs and stuff like that. Rarely. I think I've been to a couple of Mars Society conventions, and I do know there are a few kids who said that the film got them into space exploration. I have run into that a few times, but other than that, not really. So,
well, I told you I don't know if I did this on camera per se, like while we were recording, but I did have an 11-year-old, and I've mentioned him before. I won't say his name or anything. He's out of India, and he's contacted me, and he is so excited, and every week or two asks me about an update for Mars Direct because I pointed him to that movie, and he watched it, and he was like, okay, I'm ready. And,
that's great.
It really does have an impact. And like I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to know what Mars Society is about and why it's an important thing, that movie tells you the story. It just in a way that you can't any other documentary.
Robert has said it was the film that he felt finally explained what kind of the heart of the Mars Society. And and it has a positive vision for the future, which I think is a very important thing for young people to have something.
You updated it in
2010, 2011.
Do you have any plans to re-update it?
I was going to ask.
I have thought about. I've actually talked to Robert about this, about just maybe doing a sit-down interview just to update it. But I'm more interested in
bring in Elon Musk.
Or Elon Musk. For a while there, we were pitching. I was trying to get Elon Musk to do a documentary about him. But this was maybe 2013, 12, 13. I can't remember. Couldn't get it because he wanted to have more success before he would make a documentary. Anyways.
Well, I think he's found it. Let's do it, man. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
Ask him again, Scott. Ask him
All
again.
right. Okay. But it's possible we could open it up again and make another story. I don't know how. I think I'm more interested in making a new film that sort of takes off where the Mars Underground leaves off.
Okay.
And I've been working on that with my production company. I have a production company in Los Angeles. We do a lot of different films. We're doing a feature film right now. But it's really in the preliminary stage. I'm calling it Blue Mars. I don't know if that's going to be the final name, but it's sort of taking off. It's not going to talk too much about getting that first footprint on Mars. It's going to, what happens after that, and how do you terraform Mars? Should you terraform Mars? Kind of slightly inspired by many books, but one of the books Robert wrote, which I loved, what's it? How to Survive on Mars? Like a guide to how to survive on Mars. Have you guys read this one?
Yeah, I have it.
Which is very funny. I mean, it's a very, very funny book. So
he's got that wit.
Yeah, I love the what's the scene where everybody's they don't bury you, they just let you be frozen outside because anybody who dies on Mars is just going to be frozen in position. So.
Mars popsicles.
Right. So it fascinates me. I love the idea of a second home for humanity and for all life, not just humanity, but I think that sounds like a great act of creation. Maybe it's an incredibly arrogant thing to like the idea of, but
is that going to involve anything from Kim Stanley Robinson, because he's got Red Mars?
I know. That's his book, but not really. No. The script is yet to be finished. I created a trailer for pitching it to networks and documentary channels, but I'm working with Hydra Studios and others on it, but it's still in a very preliminary state.
So is it going to be a documentary similar to like the way
a fully animated documentary, no talking heads? I find that it's kind of boring. 100%, and completely, Hollywood quality animation, not like in the Mars Underground where we're doing it in our basement.
So is it going to be like how they did the second Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, where they would cut to some animation?
No. It would be entirely animated with a narrator. The only films that I can think of that are kind of like that there's a documentary series or a documentary film called Alien Planet back many years ago, and it's speculative documentary about, based on science, what happens if a probe goes to an alien planet, and did it have like the flying probe? Was the probe and it's a futuristic documentary. I mean, it's speculative, of course. And they talked to a lot of scientists about, okay, let's say this is the size of this planet, the gravity, the atmosphere, and life has taken hold, and how would it evolve in this gravity? And then it's an almost entirely animated documentary. It's a wonderful documentary. And then
I remember watching it. Yeah,
a probe lands and it's all animated. So I think it's partly just because it's so much fun to sit and animate. You can let your imagination go. But we would definitely keep it in the world of science and talk to all the scientists. But I think it would be more interesting to have a narrator, like a Liam Neeson or something as the narrator.
I always love the narrator for Mars Underground. It's a British narrator.
We were looking at Christopher Plummer to do the narration.
Heck yeah.
We tried a lot of people on the narration on that, and the truth of the matter is it's the temp narration, just what you call in filmmaking, you falling in love with your temp. And it was actually what we edited to, and we just never found a narrator that we liked as much.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's actually the editor's voice. It's Rob Thorne. So yeah, and we never found a narrator we liked as much. We just kind of found
He did great.
temp. So
Yeah. I mean, that's something I would have never known.
yeah, it was the editor's voice. He had a great voice.
I mean, that y'all had tried to get other people, and
yeah, we experimented with a lot of different people, and but we ended up just going with him because I liked it.
you know who would be good is like James Earl Jones. Anybody with that deep
absolutely
voice.
Absolutely. So
Simba, this is your new domain.
I remember my first experience watching the Mars Underground. I think I cried.
Wow.
Yeah, because, well, it was so close to who I am and what I do. And I was just so proud of the Mars Society. I was so proud of the, Carol and Penny and Chris and all those who started, just from students at the university, starting Mars Underground and what it's come to now. And our conferences are growing, and our followers are growing, and our members are growing, and our chapters are growing. I was just immensely proud. I was just so grateful that, someone would make something like this. So thank you very much.
Yeah. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun to make. So
yeah.
And even more so that it's been available on YouTube to be able to inspire more people is very, very, it's still very inspirational today. I mean, but the first edit that I saw, I fell in love with, and I don't remember what was in it. I know you changed and updated it.
Yeah, I took out some things. I took out dust storms because I found it just got a little boring.
It's
the reasons why, the problems with going to Mars. I took out some of the radiation section because it just got a little too long, I felt. I remember, I'm not sure if that was a wise idea because most of the comments against settling on Mars is there's no magnetosphere on Mars. So maybe that was a mistake. And that's a subject I probably should have gotten more into, other subjects too. But I'm glad everybody liked that. It was great.
Well, I'm sure if you end up doing this Blue Mars series, that those things will be touched on heavily.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll dive into that stuff very deeply. Yeah.
Exciting.
Well, that's cool. I'm really excited to see what comes about on that new project. Again, I love Mars Underground. I think you did a great job, particularly given what the tools you had at the time. And I throw this stuff together, but
yeah,
it's a whole nother level.
I should give a shout out to the composer, Jim Dooley, who's a Hollywood composer now. And almost nobody knows this, but the UCLA Orchestra did a live performance of that soundtrack, or about 30 minutes of the soundtrack, in front of an audience at UCLA with the film playing silently. And
wow.
I probably lost to history, but that was quite an experience to come see that, the UCLA Orchestra doing that.
It sounds like that would be so cool.
It was an original, soundtrack. So, but I'm still working with that composer on this new film. So.
Oh, excellent! I think I don't know. We do auctions at the Mars Society conferences, and I think I got either a copy of that soundtrack. Yeah, like some original. I think it has someone's signature. I don't know if it's yours or Robert's but I think
it's probably the composer. But
but yeah, I love that. It's also very inspirational. It's great music to listen to, and I think my favorite one is one's called Dr. Zubrin. I think.
Is it?
Yeah, I think it's the little sounds like da-na-na. I can't.
Yeah.
I'd be terrible.
Was it like the theme that was playing behind whenever you were watching him?
No.
I think so. I think it's like when he's like.
I think that's. Oh, I know the one you're talking. That's when we start. There's about 10 minutes into the film, we start talking about Robert's backstory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a kid,
he's got all that hair, and he looks like he's.
I love that.
An engineer's vision. Yeah, the composer changed created its own names for those tracks. I probably would have liked to have had a say on that because I think that should have been an engineer's vision as opposed to Zubrin, but whatever. Something.
If that's the worst thing about the movie, I think you're doing all right.
I mean, it makes my it makes my job really easy because whenever anyone asks me. I mean, I can answer them what's the Mars Society about? I can answer them and also say, also, by the way, there's this great documentary you can see and it's on YouTube. So that's why I'm always sending out the link,
Right.
Because it helps. It's so helpful to have something visual for people to see, especially since I deal with so many people from all over the world, from different countries, that I can tell them things, but they might not understand. And if they watch something, they can understand better.
Right.
Well,
And
it's
it's been
the perfect
translated
use of
in
the
so
media.
many languages. It's been
Has it? I didn't know that.
Well, if you actually go to the YouTube channel, I believe you can just select your language, Chinese, not all languages, French, there's some very strange languages that are, not that any languages are strange, but very small speakers of certain languages. There's a lot of different, and there's versions in Europe that are, I know the Europeans did, it's like an Italian version. It was
I
kind of
didn't
big.
know that.
Yeah.
And that's really, really helpful. So now I'm going to go back to YouTube and find out how many different languages.
Where you find the Italian, the other versions, I'm not entirely sure.
Well,
I know I have a DVD from a couple of foreign countries.
I'm on YouTube at the page right now. Where would you?
How many different languages is available? Is there subtitles? I imagine there's subtitles. I think that's great.
Yeah, there are
Add
subtitles. Yeah, no, you go to
translation.
subtitles and you go into the settings and you go subtitles, and then you can pick your language: Arabic, Bangla, Chinese, English, Greek, Hindu, Indonesian,
Wow.
Korean, Persian, Polish, Portuguese, Romanian. Now, some of these may be unfinished. I don't know about how Turkish, because some enthusiast starts the translation, but it's possible some run out halfway through. Spanish, Tamil? What's Tamil? I don't even know.
I'm not sure.
Telug? What's Telug? I don't even know.
Oh, no, I'm not sure. I thought it was
Turkish.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I didn't know that. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Well, so what are you? I'm sure it's not necessarily space related, but what are you doing now?
Well, I have a production company in LA, and I do a lot of events. We do concerts. I'm doing a lot of marketing videos, corporate videos, documentaries. I'm doing a feature film called The Roman, which is an independent film. It's about an Italian in LA who kind of a Coen brothers love story. It's a very interesting film.
Is it a documentary or is it like
no, it's fiction.
Okay.
It's fiction. We're in post-production. Yeah, just stuff like that. Just producing, staying very, very busy.
That's
a lot of work to do. So hopefully there'll be time to do the Blue Mars or whatever we're going to call it. I don't know if we're going to call it Blue Mars soon.
Well, if there's anything we can do here at the Mars Society to help you out, you just got to reach out and we're there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, is there anything else that we might have left out that you wanted to cover?
I don't think so. I think I'm sure there's a million things we could talk about, but I think that pretty much does it.
What do you think, Lucinda? Anything else?
Just a big fat thank you so much for all that you've done for the Mars Society and the Mars Underground. So appreciate to even have it documented, the history of the Mars Society that goes all the way back. I think it's so inspirational that it was just students. And that's what I like to tell people, because people always, especially people who come from other countries, and maybe like the student who's contacted you, Christopher, from India, people often feel like they have to have a PhD or they've got to know engineering or, be an astrophysicist. And I said these were just students at a university who decided to get together and talk about something that was important to all of them, that they had this interest in common. And it really doesn't take much. It's just a great story to inspire others about. That you don't have to be a rocket scientist to really create something big, and we've gained momentum just by people being interested and being involved and taking action. I mean, our whole organization is volunteer based, and you don't have to be an astrophysicist or a rocket scientist or an astronaut to join. So thank you so much. I think it's inspired millions, obviously, by did you say 13 million?
13,400,000. And of course, there's pirated copies that have been out. So
more than
probably 3 or 4 million from the pirated copies all over YouTube. That is interesting. I don't know why YouTube has stopped monetizing it, but if anybody has any explanation, because YouTube is an impossible organization to get access to. For some reason, they stopped monetizing it a couple of years ago, but whatever. Even though we own all the rights.
That's unfortunate. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Well, like she said, thank you so much, Scott, for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit with us what the story behind the Mars Underground. Thanks for doing the documentary in the first place, of course.
Oh, no, my pleasure.
And thank you, viewers, for watching our show. That is it for episode 10. Next week, we'll do episode 11. Now, Lucinda, did we get the person that you know, that one guy with the one deal on?
Who?
You know? Oh, come on! You know the guy that I told you to get. You know, she is too Mexican. She's not Italian. She doesn't get it.
You mean my former NASA supervisor, Dr. Chris McKay? Yes.
Yeah. Is he coming on next week?
He said yes to
All
sometime
right.
in September.
That's awesome.
Episode 11, Dr. Chris McKay himself.
Oh, he's fascinating.
Scott Gill to him.
And I'm sure we'll do a little bit more talking about tardigrades, among other things.
Yes, and I'll definitely talk to him about my favorite quote again. And yes.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. I am super excited because I really like Chris McKay. He's just I like the way he thinks about things and says things. So.
He's amazing.
Indeed. Okay. Well, again, thank you all so much for watching. Like, subscribe, share, and comment. Let us know what you think. Volunteer if you're interested in being part of the team. We could use your help. Even if you don't have a lot of movie making skills, we got a place for you. And make sure you visit marstalk.org for all the latest episodes, any links to anything that we talk about here in the show, and anything else that you want to know about regarding Mars Talk. And we can also get you over to the marssociety.org. Now, if you want to contact me directly, you can follow me on Twitter at ArchitectNid. It's Architechnid. And Lucinda, if they want to follow you, how can they do that?
Lucinda at marssociety.org. Oh, right, via Twitter. I am Lucinda Land on Mars.
Well, so is it best to get you on Twitter, or what's the best way to get to you?
I'm happy with either way, email or Twitter.
However you want. Now, Scott, if they want to get in touch with you, it's Scott at radiusproductions.com, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Awesome.
That's it.
So Scott at radiusproductions.com. Now, the Mars Talk has been presented by Mars Society. It is produced by Lucinda Offer, Nora Hovey, James Burke, and myself. We thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week with Dr. Chris McKay.